3. This is Dr. Campbell, and we've asked all of the mentors to provide a video to introduce themselves so that students can get a better handle on who the different mentors are and what the possibilities are for mentoring them. I've been mentoring dissertations for over 40 years, and this presentation will just give you an idea of what there is available for my mentoring your study. Now I'm going to share content and get the PowerPoint. Okay. Okay, so I'm Dr. James Reed Campbell, and this is the record of my own mentoring in the last, since 2016. You can see the last 2 years I've graduated 14 students, but you can see some years I've had very few and other years I average about 6 a year. Here's some of the range of topics that I have sponsored. One is a path analysis of a college study. Another is a library study using New York State data. Another is the NAEP studies. We have, in my office at St. John's, we have and can get all the different NAEP studies. NAEP is the nation's report card, and we can get that data and do studies with it. Some more topics: path analysis of New York City's public school survey data. That was a study done recently. An international study using path analysis. We did it in Nigeria. And finally, a path analysis study analyzing the factors that contribute to technology use in today's schools. That was a Long Island study. So those are all the range of topics that I've mentored recently. Instruments and scales for use in dissertation. There's a lot of you will find that there are instruments available for studies. Schools use many commercial tests in the course of their operation. Maybe you can get access to some of that data for your dissertation. But there are also research-created scales, and so long as you get permission, you can use those scales. And I've created many scales that are quantitative in nature. My team has created them, and they're available for use by any doctoral student who asks me. I can give permission. We've also done quite a bit of qualitative work in what we're now calling best practices, and that's also available for doctoral students upon invitation. These are some of the scales I've produced for parental development, and these are the student scales. Let me go through them one by one. Each one of these scales has about 6 or 7 items, and they are reliable. Those are all the different reliabilities right there for every scale, and they're valid. Let me go through them quickly. The perceived pressure, children's view of how much pressure is putting on them by their parents, how much psychological support are the parents giving these children, how much help is being given. Our studies show that the parents that give the most help usually are the students who are doing poorly, and the parents are giving the help because the students are not doing well. How much supervision the children are getting, and the press for intellectual development. How much have the parents tried to develop the intellect of their children? So those are the parent scales. In 2006, we ended up with some new scales we started using. One was psychological expectations. One that we didn't create but we're using anyway, are aspirations. How far the parents expect the children to go in their child's education. Do they want their child to get a college degree? Do they expect their child to get a master's degree or to go on and get doctorates? 2 scales which have been very successful is a child initiated talk, how much of that goes on in the home, and how much parent-initiated talk goes on in the home. The latest scales we're using is just in the last 3 years. We now have an academic home climate scale. So if the home climate matches the school climate, we find that the children really get an advantage. We've also got a talent development for parents, how much they help their child develop their talent. And we have a low ambition scale. That's to identify students who really have no ambition, and yet they're very bright, and they will do pretty well in school, but they just have no ambition. These are the scales we have for parents. Instead of pressure, we call that now dissatisfied parents. You'd be surprised how many parents are dissatisfied with the way their children are turning out. Again, we have psychological support, help, supervision, and press for intellectual development. As an example of one study that's going on right now, Carmen Lopez, one of our doctoral students, is using several of our parent development scales together with 3 of the Dweck team scales. So we'll be able to measure mindset and effort and goals. Those are all part of the scales used by the Dweck team. Okay, so that's an example of a current study underway with scales. We've also done quite a bit of qualitative work. Now, this is our qualitative section. We have been collecting parents' best practices. Our team has been collecting these best practices by interviewing families with high achieving children. Our objective was to discover their secrets, and to disseminate this information, we decided to write books for parents. And the first 3 you can see right there. We did the research by interviewing American parents, and then we went to Taiwan and interviewed a pretty good sample of Chinese parents. So you can see we had a book, the first book in 1995 by Brookline Books, and then we did 2 books in Mandarin for Chinese parents. We then did a big revision of the original book in 95. In 2005, we added 62% more best practices. And Dr. Cho and myself wrote a book just for Korean parents. And finally, the 4 doctoral students you see there, we went out and met with successful students and parents who were attending public schools in New York City and Long Island. That book took a long time for us to write. We have great reviews for the book. I'll read you one of them. This is from the Kirkus Review, which is the librarian's review. A direct, powerful manual for greater parental involvement. So the best practices we have now collected over 503 primary source practices. I could visualize a study with a Down syndrome child that parents have done a fabulous job with. Maybe one of our doctoral students could interview that parent and that family, interview the whole family, and find out what they did to produce such progress in the Down syndrome. And this could be published and recommended to other parents who have such children. We presented a paper at AERA that compared the best practices of all the different racial groups, and we're expanding that analysis, and we hope to have an article on it. The projects I will not accept. I don't want any part of any New York City study that requires the New York City IRB. Students wait for years. They are so disappointed, and I just don't want to get involved in those studies anymore. I hope this has been helpful, and thank you for your attention.